us to go through the whole process. And yeah, we can be voting. Okay, so Sean Newman, he's doing his Cornerstone Forum again, 2026. Go ahead and grab some tickets. It'll be in Calgary, March 28th. I plan to be there. I was at the last one. He does a good show, good information, good guests. So do check it out. Tickets are available, and their early birds are going quick. So go ahead and grab some of those. And while you're at it, you can join our event as well. January 10th. So the Dallas Brody. Yep. Or the LevineShow.com, you'll find the link right on the homepage there. Dallas Brody, it was a good interview. So 40 minutes. It's got some good traction. People wanted to hear from her. But shortly after this interview, it came out that the One BC Party had removed her as a leader. This is still an evolving situation. I've heard from both sides now. I've gotten information about what's going on, at least from both sides. And of course, the truth is somewhere, we're going to be somewhere in the middle. You have both sides. But it does sound like, without disclosing any off-the-record information, it does sound like there's a staff issue. One person was meant to be fired. Brody wanted one person fired. Instead, one of hers got fired. The other side kind of teamed up. 3 of the directors passed a amendment to the Constitution of One BC that says that if we lose confidence in a leader, we can remove them. And then right after that, it was dried. Eric came out with I lost confidence in my leader, which was enough to trigger the new amendment they just created. And then the next thing that came out, special resolution, was to remove her as a leader. So if you're following closely, like this happened quickly, very quickly. And it does look like it was a multi-week issue that was brewing. And it does seem like there's a split. So I don't know if the party will survive or what's going to happen now. But we'll be paying attention to that. And I see we've got our awesome guest hanging out in the back room. We'll be with you in 1 second. Our guest today is Pastor Rob McKee, and we'll be talking about Australia and some of that other stuff. Yes, it's horrible. So Dallas, we'll see where that goes. Another post here. So Mark Carney. Well, actually, a little bit better news. Saskatchewan has now have a secession movement. So the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project, and so that means Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Alberta are all home to active efforts to leave Canada. This is reported by the National Post.
I was going to take the hit.
And then there were 3 I posted. Who will be the first to complete independence? My money is Alberta, then Quebec, followed by Saskatchewan. This is like a fun race to watch. It doesn't matter who wins.
Correct.
It's going to be a fun race. And all 3, I think, will cross the line as well. So Merry Christmas, Carney. This could be the last Christmas for Canada as we know it. You did this. And there's a Scrooge version of Mark Carney. I love it. Great, sure. I love it when people say, oh, that's fake. Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. No, he got dressed up in a Santa costume after painting himself green.
Yeah, of course it is. So what? Like, how does that change anything? It doesn't change anything.
Oh,
There's a lot of people that just want to have to say whatever. And where we leave off here. Oh, yeah. This Mark Carney is appointed the next ambassador to the U.S. Very WEF connected, absolutely all the way through. So, folks, nothing to see here. His buddies are getting in there. Nothing to see here. All right, it's time to have the one, the only, the Bikers Church, Pastor Rob McKee, join us today. Good morning, Pastor Rob. How are you? Do you have your audio? We see ya. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get here. We see him. We can hear him. And I don't know if we can hear him. Here you are, love. Yeah. Give her a call and we'll get this worked out. We can see him. You can't hear us though. Okay, try the Robbie one that he's in there too. As he typing, try the chat. No audio from you guys. Okay. Okay, so we'll get him to try and reconnect. We'll get this going. And also text Melissa. Alright, so we'll just try and get this going and continue with the news as we work on that. Yeah, he's reconnecting now. Wonderful. So, as we talked about this, the WEF Connected, we can just pull this up. So, World Economic Forum, Mark Wiseman, Chair of BlackRock Alternative Investors, Global Head, Active Equities, BlackRock Inc., WEF, he's now the ambassador to US and Canada. What can go wrong with that? Alright, Rob, can you hear us now? Do you have us now? He does not. He does not. Yeah, we need to get him some support there. Did you text Melissa? And did you try to call him?
No, because he was reconnecting.
Okay, so give him a call and see if, yeah, he's reconnecting again. Listen, I'm trying to load. Okay, so Rob's having trouble. Rob's having trouble.
She's popping on too.
Trouble with sound, yeah. Melissa, do you hear us?
Hear you, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine. We're having trouble with Rob connecting now.
Okay.
So Rob's got no sound. Can you hear us now, Rob?
I can hear you guys now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes,
have you both.
fantastic.
Fantastic. God bless.
It's just your audio kept going out. You guys kept going mute on me, so.
Okay. So yeah, we'll just keep everything stable now. We have you both loud and clear. And we have a dog bark loud and clear right now too. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us. The Levine Show, Team Talk with Paul and Jay.
Great to see you
Glad
guys
we
again.
could be here with you guys.
Yes, well, the situation though over the weekend triggered this invite because we wanted to talk about the election in Australia, and
Yeah.
we know that everybody's paying attention to that, what's going on there, and some of the concerns here. Melissa, thank you very much for your desire to be on the show on Saturday, but your schedule and the commitments superseded. So I understand that. So I thought maybe let's do it here and have you on as well. So Melissa and Rob, God bless you both, and thank you for being here. Rob, let's go ahead and introduce you to the audience. We know you, probably a good chunk of our audience knows you, but let's make sure everybody knows you.
Sure. Yeah. I have the opportunity, along with my beautiful wife, who lead Bikers Church in Vanier, have been the lead pastors there for almost 10 years. We have an incredible heart for reaching those who are lost and broken, feeding and clothing. Avid motorcycle rider, skier, gun owner. I own several guns, which sadly can only stay in my safe. What else about me? I love barbecuing, I love smoking, and I
You
just
got a
love life.
magnificent beard.
Yeah, it's a lot of love. It's a lot of love. We're actually joking. I actually felt like shaving it off a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I did. It's just one of those days, like it wasn't a good beard day. I was like, maybe I should just shave it. I've had it for like 12 years now, so, but the beard won out.
Yeah, Melissa, okay, well that's the breaking news. He almost shaved me. What were your thoughts about that one? Were you on board for it or you're like, heck no?
Convoy, lead truck, big red, massive TikTok audience, somehow
No audio for you.
had, several different TikToks going all around the same time.
Just do a reconnect and then I'm sure we'll be fine. This has been a podcast at East Green Yard recently. Go ahead and just reconnect Melissa and we'll have you back. Love
The
you.
reason I want to bring you on is because
Okay, yeah, there's something we're going to do there. Maybe ceases to push buttons. Melissa, just can you reconnect and we'll have you back. So Rob, so you saw what happened over the weekend
Yeah.
in Australia. Let's go ahead and just, what are your initial thoughts on that? Like what happened?
Yeah, well, I remember waking up on in the morning, and I was just after reading my Bible, I was scrolling through X, and I saw all these things coming in from Bondi. I was like, "Whoa, what's going on in Australia?" And then really quick realized it was a Hanukkah celebration, and was just devastated. I thought, "Oh man, there it is again, another anti-Semitism attack on the Jewish people. Like, how much more do they have to go through?" And so my heart was really grieved. Took a moment to pray for the families of those affected, and just stood and said, God, like, what's it going to take to change this? What's this going to take? And realizing that in the world that we live in is broken and fallen, that the sad reality is it's probably not going to get better. I think this is just a precursor to more violence that we're going to see, not just against Jewish people, but I think we're just going to see that on the rise as this Islam movement. I know that's probably not going to sound nice to a lot of people, but it's understanding at the core, their heart is global domination, and there's no getting around that. You read their literature; it's what they want, and whether it be first for the Jew and the elimination of the Jewish people, and then for Christians, I think it's a topic that a lot of people are afraid to begin to address and step into because of how sensitive it is. But it's there, and we're seeing it. I think Europe is a very good illustration of left unchecked where the West is heading.
Yeah, so Melissa, do we have your audio back?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, you do. Yeah. Okay, so as we jump into this, the conversation that we were having on Saturday was our Muslim values, Canadian values, because this is what Mark Carney himself said. He came out and said Muslim values are Canadian values. So what are your thoughts about that statement from Mark Carney, and especially now what we saw happen over the weekend?
Those are not my thoughts whatsoever. I do not agree with it. I don't condone it. I'm not okay with it. And most of the people that I know don't either. We're being taken over by Islam because our government is allowing it. And the word Islam, it's oppressive. It means, Rob, what is the meaning of Islam?
Submission.
So this is it's a religion. It's not a religion of peace, as many are doing. And the proof is in the pudding there. So, and look, I know this is very complicated because, Israel isn't innocent completely in all it is in the world. So, we're not blind to this, okay? At Bikers Church, we know that there are things that are happening that are not good. But Islam is its own thing, and we have to look at it as what it is. And it's actually part of the satanic agenda. Recovering Satanist, reformed, delivered, set-free Satanist, they would tell you that Islam is the number one threat to the Jews, Christianity, because Jesus is the for everyone, whether you're on board with Israel, because there are a lot of people that really hate Israel. That means they hate all the Jews, they hate the country, they hate the land, and therefore they're against everything that Israel is. Any people, any Jewish people, it's like they're just whitewashing everything. Hate all of Israel, hate all Jews, like they're all bad. And I recently had a great conversation with someone, and I was, they were saying, how can you be for Israel? And I God, and our Messiah is Jewish. God chose the Jewish people to bring salvation through. And so that's why I'm for Israel, is because I'm for the God of Israel. And that is where our salvation is from. And we can't spend an eternity with God if he doesn't keep his covenant with Abraham, with Moses, with Noah, with David, all the covenants that he's made with people, with humanity. They won't be fulfilled if it's not through the Jewish Messiah. So, my great question to everyone is, what do you do with the Jewish Messiah? So how can Mark Carney get up and say that Muslim values are Canadian values when everything that they are for is completely against Jesus Christ, completely against the Bible? completely against how Christians and Jewish people, the root of why we believe what we believe. So there's a whole lot wrapped up in this. We could talk for hours on it. So I don't know which direction you want to go now. I've just said a lot there, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so Rob, what I want to talk about a little bit more, and look, we had this episode on Saturday all about this. Pastor Arthur Pulaski came on, he was reading from the Quran, talking about basically we're all infidels, we need to be beheaded, we need to be terrorized, we need to be eliminated. These are verses out of the Quran. Are you familiar with this? And do you think the Australia thing was just a random act of violence, or was it a targeted, very targeted act of violence?
The history of the Quran is pretty interesting. It's kind of broken up into two parts. You have the Medina period and the Mecca period. And the start of it was actually pretty peaceful. Muhammad has this encounter. I don't believe it was with an angel. I believe it was a demon. We know that the Bible is very clear. In the last days, there are going to be people that are going to come claiming this. We're the Messiah. Here's the Messiah. There's the Messiah. So I believe the Quran is an ultimate deception. And so when Muhammad comes onto the scene, he started very peaceful. He started with a religion of peace, taking what was given to him in the caves and trying to flesh this out. And it wasn't until he went to Medina from Mecca that it changed. And it shifted from a peaceful religious movement to a political movement disguised as religion. And then he went back to Mecca, and that's when he began his conquering. So I don't believe what we saw at Bondi Beach was just random. I believe it was targeted. There's a desire in a heart at the heart of Islam to slay the infidel, to slay the unbeliever. If you look at the Quran's not actually in chronological order, and the further you get into Muhammad's life, the more violent Muhammad comes. And Surah chapter 9 is the last chapter of the Quran chronologically, and it happens to be the most violent chapter in the Quran. So you see it as it progressed. It was not ever a desire of a religion of peace. It was conquest. It was death. It was destruction to the infidel, to the Jew, to the Christian, and everyone else who wouldn't believe or wouldn't fall in line with what Islam was preaching. So no, it's evil to the core. I'm not saying Muslims are evil. There's a lot of great Muslims out there that are kind and compassionate, but we're talking about Islam, and the heart of Islam is deception and death to the core of what it stands for and what it is.
Okay, so the question is, you made a distinction between Muslims and Islam.
Yeah.
Islam itself, though, is it extreme in its very nature? Because some people are saying, well, it's only the extreme side that's doing this. Is there a distinction there between extreme Islam and Islam?
No, I don't think there is. I think it's the way people are fleshing it out. But if you read the Quran, it's very clear. So there's no skirting around it. So if somebody is following the Quran and following Muhammad, then they are going to act out in these ways. And if they're not, then they're not obeying their prophet. It's just way when people would say, well, Christians, there's been some great acts of violence caused by Christians. And I would say, yeah, there has. And they are not acting on what Scripture says. For us, we know that Jesus is love, is kindness. And so when Christians act other than that, they are disobeying the Scriptures. So if we're going to take that logic, when you look at the Quran, if they are not acting on what Muhammad says, then are they truly following the Quran? And again, the heart of the Quran, when you get into the later chapters, is about destruction, is about death, is about conquering, is about Muslims are going to rule the world. And that's their heart and desire.
Okay, so how you say that?
Sharia law.
So Sharia law is something that comes up a lot, and we'll play a quick little clip here from Rebel News, where they're interviewing a gentleman who's very open, maybe too open for the people around him, because later they kind of pulled him away.
Yeah.
He's talking about this, so I just want to play this little clip here about Sharia law.
So would you like to see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point, because we have families, we are making babies. You're not. Your population is going down the slump, right? And by 2060, according to Pew Research Institute, your research, by 2060, Muslims will be the biggest religious group the world over. What are you going to do then?
Actually,
Post Sharia is even then.
you know what? I'm very.
Okay, so the point of that clip was doing the math at 2060, according to
Bastard. 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 Lost their heart. Lost their heart. Your phone is shut. Phone is shut. Good boy.
Bourgeois. She's overseen the proceedings. Tamara Leach has appeared in the prisoner's box. She's wearing a black sweater that says I Heart Canadian Oil and Gas. She's wearing a protective white face mask over her face, and she's been quite cooperative with the lawyers and the judge. They've been asking questions to her for several hours now. We are told by Tamara Leach that if she does make bail, if she is released, she's promising to leave Ottawa within 24 hours. She's also promising to stop being a leader of the convoy protest. We also learned some more details about who Tamara Leach is, about her life. She lives in Medicine Hat, Alberta. She works as an administrator for an oil and gas company. She's been taking vacation days for the last few weeks as she took part in this protest. The bail amount that the judges and lawyers have been discussing all day long is in the neighborhood of $5,000. It's still not clear whether she even has access to that money. She told the court that her bank accounts have now been frozen as part of these emergency laws that have been enacted by the federal government. She also was asked by the judge if there's a potential that she could fly back to Alberta. She said, unfortunately, to the judge, she doesn't have a vaccine passport, presumably because she's not vaccinated, so she can't board a plane. She would need to get some sort of lift or ride back to Alberta if she is granted. Now, I should mention that Pat King, another co-accused, made a brief court appearance this morning. His bail hearing was moved to Tuesday morning at 9:30, and last night, a third leader, Chris Barber, he was granted bail on the condition that he leave Ottawa within 24 hours. He's also facing 4 charges. Michael.
Neil, thank you for the update. CBC's Neil Erland. Now, we're going to keep a very close eye on Ottawa as we continue to watch the police action in the nation's capital. This is day 2 as police forces from across Ontario, as well as the Sûreté du Québec, come together to try to break up the protest action beginning yesterday at around the 8 o'clock Eastern hour, now continuing on this Saturday. And as we continue to track the latest in Ottawa, we also want to give an eye to Quebec City because protests against COVID-19 measures are taking place in the Quebec capital. Police have made 3 arrests and say the majority of protesters remain peaceful. Our Sarah Levitt brings us the latest.
An entirely different atmosphere here in Quebec City than in Ottawa. The protesters are back. They were here about 2 weeks ago, and much like 2 weeks ago, they're
let's focus once again on Ottawa, because we're now hearing an update from the organizers of the so-called Freedom Convoy. In a statement they released today, the organizers first accused police of committing abuses of power, and then they go on to say, quote, "We have therefore asked our truckers to move from Parliament Hill to avoid further brutality. To move the trucks, it will require time. This has been communicated with Ottawa Police, and we hope that they will show judicious restraint." Now, the truckers are moving, they say, and the use of more force will only be used to punish people and not to preserve or establish order. Again, that is a direct quote from the organizers of the Freedom Convoy. Well, we also want to get some reaction to that development, and we're reaching out once again to Murray Faulkner, former police chief with London in Ontario. So Murray, when you hear that statement from the organizers, what's your reaction?
Well, obviously, the people that are standing in front of the public order unit haven't listened to it. The organizers are saying basically go home. You can see on the screen that the police really have upped their game here. There's a large number of officers in reserve, so probably you're going to see some movement next short while. The white helmet officers were at the front line, and now they have been all replaced by the fluorescent green officers' vests. So, as you can see, they are moving in, and obviously they're going to do another police movement here.
Another police movement, and it seems they're moving south rather than east here to try to get people away from Parliament Hill. Walk us through, because at this point it looks like there are more police officers than protesters gathered on the other side of that police line.
Well, I don't have a clock close by, but I suggest probably that line has been stationary now for maybe about 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, roughly
It's just
speaking.
giving time for officers in other parts of the downtown to get some refreshments, to have a washroom break. They're now refreshed, and they are coming back out onto the lines to take a bit more action. So, I do not think that this line is going to be stationary for much longer.
As you say that, we were talking about this operation perhaps lasting longer than today. Walk us through the stages here. Is it today to secure the hill, tomorrow to disperse them? What kind of timeline are we actually looking at here?
Well, again, the timeline is depending upon the protesters and how willing they are to disperse. But I think the primary objective today was to on Wellington Street and to have all those large vehicles, tents, trailers removed. And that's accomplished. And now I think what we're going to see is a bit of police movement of pushing that group back to see if they will disperse even more. Unfortunately, probably that group is some of the hardcore people, and I'm hoping that violence and use of force can be kept to a minimum.
Well, certainly we are watching, Murray. Again, appreciate your time today. We'll come back to you a little later in the next hour, but for now, our thanks to Murray Faulkner, former chief with London Police. Now, again, let's take a look at the scene. To the right of your screen, you see there Wellington in front of Parliament. Intersection of Bank Street. We continue to see a number of officers come together. As Murray was suggesting, we are probably not that far away from the next action, so we're going to have that for you live here. And at the top left of your screen, well, you see Wellington further east in front of the Prime Minister's office, where police have cleared out a number of the protest vehicles and in their place have put police vehicles on the screen. Well, that red area denotes the secure area as declared by police to make sure that protesters do not increase in numbers, nor do people bring aid to those protesters who remain around the hill. So, for the very latest, let's go right now to the CBC's David Common. He's been on the ground all day for us, tracking the movement of both police and protesters. So, David, I see you walking down is that Bank Street that you're at right now?
This is a bank in Wellington. What we're seeing here, you were talking about just a moment ago. We now see so there's a much larger group of police that are in that area right now. A significant number of protesters who are here as well. And if there is indeed about to be a movement of police police. And you're about to see it. How are you? Good, how are you? I'm good. No, I'm in the middle of doing my job. How are you doing today? I'm good. What brings you here? I want to see the Canadian Spirit resurrected. And what's that look like? It looks like this. Are you concerned about being arrested? What I see here, you were talking. Does concern me. Yeah. Where are you from? Kitchener Waterloo area. Yeah. And how long have you been here? A few hours. There's a bit of an edge in here. I think it's a different tone than the past 3 weeks. Have you been here previous? No, but I know people who have. Yeah. Well, good to meet you. Stay warm while you're out here. We're still in the middle of doing our job right now, but you do see that a large number of police officers have moved into this area. So you're seeing now a movement of police sort of encircling the crowd, and that's likely to mean that there's going to be a push down here, push down bank, as additional officers come into play. So what we'll do is we'll just get a tiny bit closer here before we ourselves are likely to have to back as well. The wind really picking up here, Michael, over the course of the day. And so you do see that, these officers have the numbers on the back. Those are certainly the Quebec officers. They're backstopped by Ottawa police tactical vehicles that are over here. So larger group that's here. What we now expect is there could well be movement. It's just a question of how that movement happens and where it goes, and if there's a continued push out of this area. So just to situate us very quickly, Parliament, right there. Wellington here, where this morning there were many trucks, big rigs, some of them moved out, some of them had their windows moved out voluntarily, I should say, really at the last second, because the ones that didn't move out had their windows smashed, tactical officers going in, and as I looked up there, it seemed plausible that some of them had been towed in that intervening time. But you now see that we are really encircled here. So I come in here, there's people taking selfies with some of the officers streaming everything. But it is a larger group here. And when we look, we do have officers really right around us. So I'm just going to back. You see an officer there. Not all the officers here are wearing gas masks. The ones that would deploy, if necessary, tear gas, although we are told that has not happened yet, not at least by the use of any police. And we are seeing more officers that are moving into place here. So there's a second line that's going in, creating a little box, a police box in there, and more officers that are coming in around this area. So now, on these three sides, we have police behind me, over to my right, and over further to the right. The only area, as a result, that does not have a line of police is here, and it would suggest that that is the intent of police, that they will push in on the area that I'm now standing, and will try to push protesters further down into the area. Now we're seeing down here that extra line of officers. A lot of people in the crowd get very amped up by this. Some want to be, chanting of freedom. And it continues. The tactical officers and their vehicles down there. And so there continues to be police movement. It's clear that there is about to be something. It's just exactly, likely pushing further away from Wellington.
Okay, David, thank you for that. I apologize for jumping in, but I do want to get to Thomas Daigle. He's at the other end of this intersection. And Thomas, you have a clearer view of police at this point. Thomas, I don't know if your microphone's turned on. We're having a hard time hearing you.
You're not hearing me? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. We can hear you now, Thomas. I can hear you now.
I was just saying we're on Wellington, here in downtown Ottawa. These are lineups of Surtout Quebec officers lined up with batons, pushing back protesters here on Wellington Street, now a couple blocks away from the Parliament buildings. This is part of the quick succession of pushes from several police forces who've been deployed to Ottawa in the past couple of days. What we've seen again in the past few minutes, as we did earlier today, is as police moved in, forcefully pushing back
protesters. They've split protesters into smaller groups. When David was reporting live for you here, he was speaking to you from Bank Street, I believe, perhaps a block away from where I'm speaking to you from. And that is where police have dispersed one group of protesters to, and the other group is here on this side. This is the first time I have seen this particular tactic where police have formed two lines. They're facing these protesters on this side where we're standing, and they also have a sort of a separation between the two lines of officers and have protesters on the other side. They're facing them as well. Again, a sign of how unusual and extraordinary this police response has been is the fact that we have police from another province, provincial police from Quebec, deployed to the streets of Ottawa, enforcing the order for the crowd to disperse. But again, this has gone back to what we received just a few minutes ago before the police moved in. Protesters have just gone back to standing around. I'm trying to see if they have their tactical vehicles over in the distance, but for the time being, police have gained about a half a block here on protesters and split them up into two groups, Michael.
Two groups, one heading east along Wellington, the other heading south on Bank Street. And as you say, despite the success of pushing them back, they're still milling around. At this point, Thomas, can you say anything about the determination of protesters to hold their ground?
Yeah, it's been pretty clear to protesters for well over a day now that if they stay here, there's no question that they will face arrest. Police have changed their wording today. Instead of saying over the megaphone that if you stay around here, if you don't disperse, you may be arrested, they're now telling them repeatedly today, if you stay around here, you will be arrested. I can't remember the exact figure that Ottawa Police put out earlier today in terms of the number of arrests carried out today. It was in the dozens. 47, I believe, is what I'm being told. And we expect that number will continue to rise, but we're not seeing targeted arrests here. We are seeing police officers, in one case here with the SQ, holding a video camera, taking images of the protesters on the front lines, and I'm just looking around to see if we can still see officers on rooftops. I don't see them from my vantage point, but I'm sure that they are still deployed on nearby rooftops, keeping an eye on the advance and the movement of protesters. You see in the middle of this SQ deployment is RCMP tactical units, the emergency response team here. Again, extraordinary to see this number of different police forces working together. They're pushing protesters back again, and we will have to move with them. I will say that there is lots of snow on the ground. The snow's been blowing around, and
Thomas, if I can interrupt, let's just watch the scene. Let's watch the scene, please. And as we break away, you see we've now moved over towards the other camera. This is David Collins' camera. This police line pushing protesters south along Bank Street. To the top left of your screen, that is Thomas Begg's camera as police in that line push them east down Wellington. Either way, it is trying to push protesters away from the Parliament Hill complex, and much like we have seen over the last several hours and days, police moving slowly and methodically, although this time around on this day, wearing police helmets and carrying batons and wearing vests. Ottawa Police saying earlier today this was in response to the behavior of some protesters as they were being asked to clear the area. So Thomas, thank you for letting us take in that view and that shot at this time. Just describe for us now what is happening around you, please.
Continued standoff. Police gained another few meters as they pushed protesters back. The crowd where we are standing has dwindled a bit. I believe protesters have moved toward where our colleague David Cullen and his crew are standing towards Bank Street. But this is Wellington, and it bears repeating because you're just doing our coverage this afternoon. It bears repeating that this stretch of Wellington Street was
full of big rigs for the past 3 weeks, and tents, bouncy castles, and all sorts of entertainment items for this protest. That has all been cleared out. There are some large vehicles still parked down the street, but this stretch of Wellington has been cleared. The big rigs and police continue their advance.
I want to read to you a new tweet, and this is from the Ottawa Police, Thomas, and I'm going to ask you about it, but the Ottawa Police saying, quote, "Once again, we are seeing young children being brought to the front of the police operation. This is dangerous, and it is putting the children at risk," and they attached to it an earlier tweet of 2 hours ago in which they say children may be taken to a place of safety. Can you talk to us about that issue, Thomas? What have you seen in terms of children on the front lines?
Yesterday, early in the day, we saw protesters on this street set up a bouncy castle, which they've set up through many times. It's sort of become one of the lasting images of this protest in defiance of local residents who pleaded with protesters to leave the bouncy castle, leave their big rigs, and get out of here. But in any case, we saw what appeared to be a parent and her child playing on the bouncy castle here in the middle of the protest zone yesterday. And again this afternoon, just about an hour ago, I witnessed someone who appeared to be a mother with her young child standing around in this protest, despite the fact that police have repeatedly told protesters not to bring the children to this illegal demonstration, and they have told them that they can face fines of was it $5,000 and 5 years behind bars if they do so. Yeah, still seeing it today.
Thomas, thank you. We will check in with you again as this day goes on. The CBC's Thomas Day in Ottawa on Wellington Street, just east of Bank Street. Well, as we watch all of this unfold right now, we are reaching out once again to the Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson. Mayor Watson, thank you for joining us today. Excuse me, Mayor Watson, I think we're having some audio. If you bear with me 1 second, I don't. There we go. We have the sound. There we go, Mayor Watson. Thank you. Thank you for joining us again. How are you feeling right now watching this second day of police action against the protesters?
Well, on the one hand, very pleased with the professionalism of our police services across the country who've come to help our city and in our time of need. But obviously concerned, there's still a core group that we're seeing on footage that you're hearing right now, Michael. There's still a hardcore group that are taunting police, being completely irresponsible, and don't want to see them leave. So I'm very pleased that we've been able to clean up Wellington Street, and a lot of the trucks, almost all the trucks are gone. The street is back to some sense of normalcy. But the problem is these people don't seem to want to leave, and when it comes to nighttime, obviously that's when it becomes even more challenging. So my admirations for the police and their measured response today. They've been put through a lot of abuse during a very cold day in Ottawa.
You say a hardcore group of protesters, but it seems that we're talking about still hundreds of people that refuse to surrender the ground. How many people are left here, understanding?
Well, I'm getting a briefing on that in the next hour or so by our Chief of Police, Chief Bell, so I don't have that information for you right now, but just observing, it looks like there's, could be anywhere between 300, 400, or 450 people. I'm pleased that we were able to move a lot of these trucks. I'm going to suggest to our city manager that under the Emergency Act, we actually have the ability to confiscate those vehicles and sell them. And I want to see them sold. I don't want them returned to these people who have been causing such frustration and angst in our community. And I want to sell them and put towards the cost that we've been incurring in Ottawa to put up with this foolishness for 4 weeks, which is 3 weeks and 6 days too long.
Well, you mentioned rather the Emergencies Act, and as you know, right now in the West Block, Parliament is both in person and virtually debating the merits of the Emergency Act as it needs parliamentary approval. Do you believe this was a necessary tool to get to this point?
You know, and it's proven to be a necessary tool and a useful tool as well. When we have officers coming in from other jurisdictions in the past, you had to sign them in as peace or swear them in as peace officers. That takes a lot of time. That doesn't have to be done anymore. We can confiscate property and material and sell it for our own purposes. Those kinds of things are important. Tow trucks, as you know, that was a big concern that we had. Tow truck companies just did not want to get involved in this. The Emergency Act forced system too, and you've seen all day a number of heavy industrial tow trucks that are cleaning up our streets after the 4 weeks of chaos that these protesters have brought into our city. So there are a number of measures in the Emergency Act that have benefited us on the ground in pragmatic terms over the course of the last 24 hours.
You know, Mayor, I want to talk about the timing of this. You know, Emergencies Act aside, this has been, as you know, weeks in the making. People in Ottawa have complained publicly on social media, to media, about the kind of torture they've endured with the endless honking, with the harassment on the streets. Why did it take so long to get to this point?
That's a very good question, and I think it will come out at the inquiry that is required under the Emergency Act. And two of my colleagues, Councillors Hupin and Tierney, have put forward a motion that passed unanimously that we have our own independent review, because that's the question everyone wants to know. I know one of the reasons was that we just did not have the firm commitment for the number of officers to back up the words on the page of the injunction. But we have to have a thorough review of exactly why these trucks were allowed to come into the downtown core, particularly on Wellington Street, which trucks are not allowed to be in, and one of our most important streets in the country, all of the House of Commons and the Supreme Court, and they just park there. And the reality is, unless you get these things resolved within the first 24 hours, it grows and becomes a magnet for every group that wants to come and berate the government or complain about something. So I think we need an independent review, which we'll get at the federal level and we'll get at the municipal level, for two reasons. One, because the public deserve to know why this turned into from protest to a sit-in and occupation. And secondly, how can we avoid it happening again? We're going to have to do some short-term measures, for instance, once this is all cleaned up on Wellington. How do we barricade the street on a short-term basis to protect the parliamentary precinct? And what are the logistical challenges of doing that? Because that's a major thoroughfare for bus traffic through Gatineau, as well as motorcades, the Prime Minister, and so on. So we need to find something in the short term that sends a very clear signal to the would-be protesters from other groups. You can't come to Ottawa anymore, shut down our city for 4 weeks. That's off, and it should never happen. We have to get to the bottom of why the police did not respond more quickly. We know, as I said, one of the reasons we didn't have enough officers. We thank those officers from other jurisdictions that work with the provincial government and the federal government. And we have a good, solid presence of professional members of police services from coast to coast.
You know, I also want to get your thoughts on the current operation, Mayor, because as you know, protesters have been pushed off of Wellington essentially and being forced down either O'Connor earlier in the day, now down Bank Street. But for those who don't know Ottawa, it is just a few blocks before what is essentially a government area becomes a residential area. Are you concerned for the safety of area residents as police try to break up this protest?
Well, I have been since day one. That's been my number one preoccupation, is how do we give some greater protection and peace of mind to those residents who put up with so much, the honking of the horns, the stench of diesel fuel. The fact that we have more police officers tells me that we're going to have to put more of them in those residential areas, because as we push some of these yahoos out of the parliamentary precinct, we don't want to cause another problem in a residential neighborhood. And that's been one of the frustrations, I think, that these people don't seem to understand, the protesters, that we have vibrant neighborhoods, whether it's Centertown, or Glebe, or Lower Town, or Byward Market, and people live in these areas. I've told people throughout the week, no one lives on Wellington Street. There's not one person that lives there, but just a few blocks behind, there are tens of thousands of people. And you've seen some of the stories that have come out where one idiot tried to handcuff the doors of an apartment building, another one threw some kind of a smoke bomb in the lobby. The non-stop honking of horns, the rude, sexist, homophobic, racist behavior by some of these people yelling and screaming, the harassing of our small business community. But, we have to make sure that those people are given greater protection by the police, at least in the foreseeable future. And I also want to mention, I'm very pleased, because another preoccupation of mine is how do we support our small businesses? They have suffered tremendously, not just because of the 4 weeks of this chaos, but they had COVID they had to deal with and all the restrictions. So if you recall, Michael, 2 weeks ago, the province lifted the lockdown and people could go in and have a meal at a restaurant. Well, most of the businesses that were around the parliamentary precinct couldn't do that because they were in an unofficial lockdown imposed by the the truck drivers and the convoy. I was pleased today that Mona Fortier, the president of Treasury Board, is also the MP for Ottawa Bagné, and Yasser Naqvi, who's the MP for Ottawa Centre. Their two ridings are the most affected. They just announced a $20 million fund to help small businesses in their time of need, because many of these businesses are hanging on by their fingernails because they've been basically locked down as a result of this illegal activity.
Listen, Mayor, I only have about 30 seconds left here, but I do want to give you the opportunity. What is your message right now for those people who do live in the residential areas of Centretown, the Byron Market, Lower Town, as you mentioned? What's your message to them right now?
Well, first and foremost, we want them to stay safe and secure. We're doing everything we can to bring this to an end peacefully and quickly, and that governments at all three levels have to be prepared to ensure that in the short term we have the necessary police resources on the ground to give comfort and some protection to those people who have been harassed and hard hit for a long period of time, and for their businesses in those vibrant neighborhoods. The help is along the way. Invest Ottawa will be running the program to get those dollars as quickly as possible to those small businesses in Centretown and throughout the catchment area.
Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, thank you for being with us again today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, let's now go to Thomas Dang. As we saw earlier in the hour, he is following right now the movement as police try to push protesters back. Thomas, what can you tell us at this point?
We're on Wellington Street again. Protesters have been pushed back by this line of officers, but I want to just show you, Michael, if we can
I gotta use my
hand over here to show you just how
Förkorten oerhört med all my fucking stupid computer.
just in the shadow of the Parliament.
My job, no. Jag vill nema påse. Nema fucking påse. Nema påse inte fucking pičku mater. Nu är det bass mater. Kurvin.
They had all kinds of supplies for protesters, even though this was long declared an illegal
Med sin fucking
occupation.
kurvin står inne kan säga
Knives and
fucking
forks,
bra. Fucking bra. Det har jag jävla stress. Då är kurva kaj došao tu.
Barbecue set up. Just as
Oh, 4 o'clock is young and the restless.
Ponchos to stay away from the rain. And let's see what was in these boxes. More supplies, I suppose. But here's a toaster oven. It just gives you a sense. There was a tent right here, and there's another tent next to us that's still
Oh, tomorrow is the big one, eh?
From Wellington have been pushed back.
This one, darling.
And we can really get a clear view of just what's left. Look, there's another barbecue here. This was a charcoal grill, I suppose, that's been left by protesters. There's going to be major cleanup soon to be done. Let's see what's in here. Lots more supplies. Tim Hortons pods.
Just shut my mouth.
All sorts of supplies.
I should just shut my bloody mouth.
Police moved in today.
Shut my mouth.
Protesters were really intent on staying
I
for as
should
long
just
as
shut
they
my
could.
fucking mouth. For fucking 10 more bloody fucking years of this shit.
Thank you for that, Thomas Dang.
10 more years of this garbage.
Let's now go to David Collin, who's also tracking the movement of both protesters and police. David, what's happening at this point from your location?
Continued pushing that's going on. So this is essentially a wall. A new police service have not yet seen Calgary police out on the streets. Their public safety unit is now deployed here on the Spark Street pedestrian mall. In behind us, there's a large line of, in behind a crowd of protesters. There's Sûreté de Québec as well as OPP, Ontario Provincial Police Officers. So a large concentration of police officers. What's likely to happen is that they will begin pushing people down the street here, that this will be a barrier so that people can't